Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Frontline Advantage. We have a very special guest today, Lynn Kier. Lynn and I met at the Women in Manufacturing Hall of Fame induction ceremony. This was back in late September of 2023. And since then, Lynn and I have stayed in touch on LinkedIn and just communicated with one another. And we got back in touch more recently. And I said, hey, Lynn, we've got to get you on the Frontline Advantage, especially because of all the good things you do for women in manufacturing, your involvement as the former board chair of the Women in Manufacturing Foundation, and now being involved in the Education Foundation. So we'd love to hear more about that, your work today in the world of communications, and even your experiences in that. Ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome Lynn Kier. Hi, Lynn.
Vivek, thank you so much for having me. I'm thrilled to be here.
Great. So Lynn, could we start briefly by just hearing a little bit more about your background?
I've spent over 25 years in manufacturing. I've had experiences from the business side, operations side, and then now in communications and marketing. I also, as you mentioned, I'm the former chair of the Women in Manufacturing National Board of Directors, and I'm currently a board member of the Women in Manufacturing Educational Foundation, the fundraising side of WIM that powers all of the work that we do to make all of the training and education accessible to as many people as possible. I am passionate about diversity, equity, and inclusion. And I'm just thrilled to talk about all things manufacturing, communications, women in manufacturing, you name it, I'm there.
Tell us more about your passion behind this. Where did it stem from? What kind of motivates you on a day-to-day basis, on your reason to be, on why you care so much about this?
That is such a great question. For the first 15 years of my career in manufacturing, I morphed myself into what I thought I needed to be in that environment. And so the true Lynn wasn't actually present. It was what I thought and I perceived to be how I needed to be in that environment. And when over time, with mentors and coaches, I learned there's only one me, and you have to be your authentic self. But I didn't have a safe space. I didn't feel like I had a safe space to be able to project that and to be that. And I will say that when I first joined and learned of Women in Manufacturing, my very first event where they invited me to be on a panel, I didn't know what to expect. And all of a sudden I was in this community of women and our allies that were speaking the same language, had the same experiences, that I wasn't alone, and that there was this huge community of people out there to support women in manufacturing, to help us know and that this is a great career for us and help us navigate our way through. So that is why I'm so passionate, not only about manufacturing, which has provided me a great career and great enriching experiences, but women in manufacturing that has actually given me so much confidence and connection with people to know that I'm not alone. And that has inspired me to help as many people as I can have that same feeling of empowerment and connection and knowing that can-do attitude to be your authentic self in the workplace. Because that's what companies hired you for. They want you to be you.
That's a great message. For everyone out there who is currently going through something where they don't believe they can be themselves because they may be retaliated against, they may be judged, they may be told, hey, it's just about doing the work. Don't worry about expressing anything related to who you are. Don't bring that to work. What message do you have for them on how they can resolve those scenarios?
Well, those are very difficult messages to receive. But I would say if someone is receiving feedback that their authentic self isn't welcome, I would question first, am I in the right place? Is this the right place for me to be? Second of all, I think it's important to make sure you build a community of people that you trust. You can kind of think of it as your own individual board of directors that you trust, that you can go to and talk about things that are happening, because chances are they've had very similar experiences or they've observed experiences, and find out, first of all, it helps to get that out of your system, to be able to talk to a trusted person about it, and then find out how they can support you through it. What advice do they have for you? They might say, you need to find another place. But they might say, okay, here's how I would approach it. Maybe you go to your HR team. Maybe you talk to that person individually in a very courageous way, have a courageous conversation, not a stressful, emotional conversation, but have a conversation about it and say where maybe you can see where they're coming from. You can get that through the Women in Manufacturing. I mean, these events have connected me to people that I never would have met otherwise, just like you, Vivek. We attended a Women in Manufacturing event, got to know each other, realized we had a lot of commonalities and that we could actually learn from each other and grow together. And that's what Women in Manufacturing is about. So building a network of people. And that's just one channel into building that network.
You bring up some great points around mentorship and having that board of directors that can sort of help guide me both within the organization, even externally. For me personally, the experience of Women in Manufacturing was quite profound. I remember at the event, and just actually physically attending was such a big deal because men so often at almost every conference and event you go to are the majority. And so it's very comfortable and easy for men, even during things like networking and happy hours, to be able to approach another man and strike up a conversation. And I remember the feeling of like, wow, I now understand what it's like to be a minority, at least in so many of these events, to go up to people and to have to strike up a conversation where there's so many of them that are a community, and I'm honored to be an ally of that community, but I'm a little bit of the outsider. I'm a little bit of the different one where I'm having to understand what it's like to fit in a bit. And I remember talking with some of the folks on our panel that this is something that should be mandatory for almost everyone who rises to leadership positions within manufacturing, especially for these men, to actually understand what it's like for so many women who are in manufacturing that feel like they have to fit in, even if, as you described, Lynn, they're not in environments that are maybe hostile. They're decent, they're okay workplaces, but to know what it feels like to be someone who's got to fit in amongst the larger population. So that for me was very eye-opening, and I encourage any male in manufacturing to not just think what it's like in paper, but to go experience Women in Manufacturing, the annual event, firsthand, or event locally in your community. And, it's even interesting, Lynn, thinking about how people pick their career choices or companies. So many people go online, they talk to their peers, they do research on Glassdoor, and they see, what are people writing. But even those organizations that are sponsoring events or involved with Women in Manufacturing, those are organizations that are probably organizations women should lean into and maybe look to join, because they're clearly putting their dollars behind these efforts where they seem to care. Is that a good way to think about it as well?
Yeah, I think so. I want to go back though to your comment about being one of the only ones in the room. It's such a powerful experience, and I really applaud you for being there and for actually acknowledging that. And I will say that the allies that have attended these events have said the same thing. Mm-hmm. Like, wow, I never really understood how it felt, and they felt a little intimidated. And I mean, we're probably the friendliest people you're ever going to meet. We want you here and we want to talk with you. But there's that feeling of like, wow, I have to go up to this group of people. I don't know these people. They're highly engaged. And now I have to figure out how I'm going to insert myself into the convo. And I do think people need to have that experience to really get what it's like to be one of the only ones. And that's what we need. I mean, Women in Manufacturing would love to have equal representation at our events. We'd love 50-50 or whatever that looks like. So yes, I really believe that they're not only good for someone to feel what it's like to be the only one in the room, but the programming is the best. Right? You're going to learn so much from the dialogue, the content, getting those points of view that you may not be exposed to. It does make people stronger leaders. It has certainly made me a stronger leader, and I'm part of that group, but it's really, really helped. So I really just wanted to mention that. It's very, very important.
So well said. And if there's a single, especially a man who is listening to this and watching this and decides to join a Women in Manufacturing event or get involved in some additional capacity, that would be a success from this episode. So we very much would want people to realize that benefit. That was the most eye-opening thing for me. It really was. And it's not something that can be easily described. You've got to go. And it should be part of your training and leadership development to actually be someone who has to physically be there and build those relationships where you've got to enter that conversation. And as Lynn's talking about, these are not people who are out to get you. They are warm, they're engaging, and so highly recommend.
Yeah, we want you there. We want you there. And I think you mentioned, I'm also on the North Carolina local board of directors here for WIM. And we have events all the time. And we have events all around the country and actually around the world. We're expanding internationally. It's a great opportunity to even locally, like we have lunch and learns. We have actually maybe an event at a brewery. We have all these different things that we do to bring people together. It's a very low risk, low cost way to get to know the organization and put yourself in that I'm one of the onlys in the room, but in a very warm and welcoming environment because we want you there. It makes us very happy and we need you there. Bottom line, we need you. We need our allies.
Lynn, tell us a little bit about the growth of WIM too, since you first got involved in the organization, how many members, how many events, different types of things to what it's grown into today. Because I was actually quite amazed too to be in a room full of so many people, so many women and allies around such great content. A little bit more of the story too behind WIM.
My first experience was at Women in Manufacturing South. It was their very first conference. They had Women in Manufacturing North, a conference, which is in Detroit, established, highly attended, great. Then they said, you know what, there's a lot of manufacturing in the South, the Southeast, let's get going there. And we had a room of maybe 25, 35 people. Fast forward 10 years, now we have thousands of people. Like when in San Diego, we had our summit, which is the biggest event of the year for us. We had over 1,000 women. That's it's phenomenal. And that is a very powerful group. The power of all of those people working together to raise up manufacturing, to provide careers, the opportunity for careers for women in manufacturing, because it benefits us all in the manufacturing world to have a strong group of people to recruit from. It helps us retain women when you provide them these opportunities to network and engage. Every time I leave an event, I just want to sing from the rooftops in terms of what I've learned and the connections that I've met, just like with you. It was just like, that was so incredibly powerful. There's so many amazing people out there. And this is a great way to meet them. And as you mentioned, it's a very welcoming environment. It's very welcoming. It's tough when you're on the outside trying to come into a convo, but people welcome you into the conversation and they'll engage you. And it's a really wonderful experience. So the growth has been phenomenal. We are expanding internationally and have events in Brazil and Germany and all over France. They're all over. And we're building this incredible network to continue to power the manufacturing industry.
That's great. Tell us a little bit more about your work in communications too, Lynn, and maybe how that's been informed by your work in women in manufacturing.
I feel like the connection between women in manufacturing, what I've learned working with these incredible people and being exposed to all of these women and our allies, is my opportunity as a communicator is even greater. And it's informed how I communicate. It's helped me understand, we're all in it. Not only are we all in it together, but we all have shared experiences. And it's important to get different viewpoints. So I'm just one person with my own set of experiences and viewpoints. So when I communicate or draft a communication, I need to make sure I socialize it with the right people. I need a cross section of people. It can't just be the subject matter expert that I get the information from and, members of my team. I've got to find other ways to socialize it to make sure that the message is going to resonate with the intended audience. Because if it doesn't, you're not as successful. Your communications isn't successful and there's no really purpose to send it out if it's not going to resonate. And doing that, you need lots of different tools. Like we were talking at a recent event about how do you reach people that don't necessarily have email? How about the people on the plant floor? Have you worked a day in their life to understand how much time they have during the day to consume messages, to understand what they need to know? and how many competing messages might be there for that workforce. Everyone needs to talk with them and wants to talk with them. So it's a very noisy environment with very limited time and not access to the normal intranet site and email. So understanding how to communicate with that set of our very critical workforce it's beyond important. So that's what I'm focusing on at the moment is, okay, I need to really get to the plants and not just do like the sideline tour, or the wide aisle tour. Get in there, talk to the teams, understand what the opportunities are, understand what the challenges are, and then find a way to communicate in a way that's going to resonate with the audience.
You're hitting on exactly the gap we try to fill. And your point around communication is really important. So much within an organization, the benefits around communication, the transparency, the feeling of involvement, and that they have a say and that they understand that what's happening at the different levels within the organization is so critical. And that's exactly the kind of gap we try and fill. So it's great that an organization you're at and that you're running communications for at Shaw really is beginning to think about this. And probably a lot of manufacturers out there with the labor shortages we're facing need to start thinking about different ways to engage, to communicate, to retain, to motivate, and to have that ability to communicate more just creates a better working environment to demonstrate to people that their opinions matter. Not only do we want to send communication to you, we want to hear from you. We want to know exactly what you're seeing on the floor. And so I commend you for also caring about this issue and understanding, and when you and I have an opportunity to connect in further detail, understanding the business benefits behind doing this that so often people don't realize because it's not easily measurable. I don't know if you face this challenge in communication sometimes, but we find sometimes when you deal with culture, because it's something that feels more nebulous to people at times, they tend to shy away from it because it can't easily be measured. But what we try to do is tie these ideas around communication and voice to business outcomes. And all of a sudden you can get other stakeholders involved, just like you've been talking to me about with WIM and allies and how to get people involved. It's similar to say, how do you get people across the leadership team to understand the value of what's really happening on the floor? And so that's something that motivates me. And I really enjoy kind of hearing your point around communications.
Well, Vivek, you said a very important point. It's two-way communications. It's not a one-way communication. And we need to and want to hear from our employees. So if you don't have a mechanism to get the feedback, and you have, like you said, more than half of your workforce on the plant floor, that's a critical part of your infrastructure and your teams. You've got to understand what they need, why they need it, when they need it, how they need it. And I think you have to have a way to have that two-way communication during the day in the plant when they're there. And you also then can have, say, something like an app where they can also get some information and communicate when they're not there. Because most people have smartphones now, but you need both. Because as you said, you can't have your phone on the plant floor. It's not safe. It's distracting. We need a safe, healthy workforce. So there are a lot of good reasons why you can't have it there. But so how do you reach these teams in an engaging way, in a safe way, where they know that they can have confidential communications if they want to send a confidential communication? They can learn about the business. They can tie what they're doing to the business. I mean, that's important. Everything we do in communications is tied to the business. We are here to help grow and elevate the business and impact in a positive way the bottom line. Every single employee is here to do the same. But if they're not connected to the culture and they're not connected to understanding how they fit and add to the bottom line, then you're missing out on a very important level of engagement. You're not going to have the same productivity as a company that does have that. So that's a constant opportunity for communicators. And with today's technology, there are no more excuses that we can't reach that population. It's a matter of figuring out the best way for your company in a very engaging, two-way, safe, trusted, and weighted environment.
And you bring up this point around inclusion, being able to hear from everyone, and you're a DEI advocate. I want to ask you a little bit about, obviously there have been things in the news recently. So SHRM, the Society of Human Resource Management, just talked about changing their acronyms to I and D. inclusion and diversity, actually dropping the E. It used to actually be for them just prior, I, E, and D. There have been things around civility. There's events that occurred in the country this weekend. As a DEI advocate, would love to hear your perspectives on all these kind of events and more generally the trends and get your perspectives.
Well, I think no matter if you call it DNI, DEI, DEIB, any set of acronyms, I think it goes to the basic need of human beings. We are a diverse group of people all around the world, but we also have a lot of commonalities as human beings. And I don't want us to ever lose sight of that. So we really have to make sure that we remember the more viewpoints and experiences you have to inform decisions, the better these decisions are going to be and the stronger impact they're going to have. Whether that's on politics, business, personal, it matters. And you've got diversity of age. You've got diversity of experiences, culture, gender, race, religion. There's so much diversity out there. And if you can harness that and incorporate that, say, into our business, because we're talking business right now. If you can harness that into your business, you are going to, and studies show, you're going to have greater productivity. You're going to have greater engagement, smaller turnover. It's going to go to the bottom line. And we need tools to help us get that level of engagement, to really foster the two-way communication and understanding people's lived experiences. And then, as I said earlier, socializing communications in a more diverse audience to make sure you haven't missed the mark somewhere, right? Sort of like, and I hate to bring this up because I worked for this company, but back when General Motors had the Chevy Nova, and then they took that to Mexico, and Nova means no go. It's like if they had more of a diverse group of people working on this, and that's just one example of many, 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 where you can have something that if you have the right level of people in that group to review and to make decisions and to have input, that wouldn't have happened.
Yeah, bringing those perspectives ahead of time.
The world is D&I. You don't have, I think we all strive for a world where we don't have to have acronyms to describe it. That it's just there as a part of the fabric of our world.
That is really well said. Is there anything else you want to add, Lynn, before we wrap up?
Well, I could talk to you forever, and I really appreciate this conversation. I really appreciate your support of manufacturing, of our frontline workers, of women in manufacturing, and I just can't wait I'm just excited for what you're going to continue to do and bring to our industry and for our frontline associates. Vivek, thank you again for having me on your podcast. I'm so happy to be here. It's been really engaging, and I'm just looking forward to seeing what we're going to do next.
Sounds great. Thank you so much, Lynn. This was great.
Thank you so much, Vivek. Have a great one.